Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the CouchScouts podcast. I'm your host, Matt Jackson, and with me as always, I've got my co-hosts, Matt Cooper
What's up?
and Matthew Rupert.
How's it going, man?
How you fellas doing, man? Happy draft month season. We are officially in the month of the NFL draft.
Can't believe it.
Man.
This year's going by.
It is peak rookie film grinding season.
I do have to ask you, Coop, man, what's up with the red lights at the background, man?
Wolfpack, baby, let's go. Final Four.
Had to go ahead and get that.
I'm an NC State grad, and I'm pretty excited. They've never made it this far in my entire life. They've also never won an ACC tournament in my entire life. So this is exciting times to be a Pack fan. So I had to represent tonight. Had to change up the lights, throw on the hat.
You know, my mom was picking the bracket challenge things, and she was joking around. She was like, I'm going to pick NC State to go all the way because wouldn't it be funny if they went all the way? And now it's not looking like such a crazy pick.
I never do the bracket challenges, and whenever I do, I always just do the homer pick and pick NC State to make it all the way. I'm like, I would have done pretty good this year. I probably would have won this year.
I did that, and I'm in first place in all of my bracket challenges.
Heck yeah.
It's great. Fantastic. Well, I'll tell you who we're not talking about tonight. We're not talking about NC State football players, but we are talking about some key running back, or maybe not key, but some running back positions. Two guys that I was a little excited to dive into the film too, and I'm excited to see what you guys have to say about them. Of course, we're continuing our Inside the Prospect series, and if you guys are interested in where we're getting this film that we're grinding, that Matthew Rupert just talked about a little bit, where it's film grinding season. If you're interested in where we're getting it from, you can go to the Dynasty Nerds page. They have a film room that is just absolutely stacked with all 22 film. Make sure you guys use promo code COOP for 15% off. Get in there, get a nice little discount for all your film grinding. But tonight we're discussing, like I said, the running back position. And we're discussing two guys. That's Kentucky's Ray Davis and Clemson's Will Shipley. And you guys ready to go ahead and dive in straight into Ray Davis?
Ready to go.
Yeah, man, let's get into it.
Let's do it. Well, Ray Davis, 5'8", 211-pound senior. He was a three-star prospect and the number 134 running back in his class. Guys, this dude has been absolutely all over the place. He started with Temple, then transferred to Vandy for 2 years, and then finally ended up with Kentucky for his fifth-year senior season and put on his best season with 1,129 yards and 14 touchdowns. And as always, when discussing the running back position, the first thing we start with is his vision and his patience. And I'm going to start with you, Rupert. What did you notice about this area of his game?
I thought he had some of the best patience and vision in his class. He did a really good job of stringing together moves. You know, he could kind of see multiple kind of layers down the field. And when he got to the second level, he could make a guy miss. And he was already planning his juke for, the safety or whoever was next. He did a really good job following his blocks and kind of being creative, even though he may not always have the physical ability to kind of create on his own. But I thought he was a really creative runner when he needed to be, and just was really, really impressed. I wasn't expecting to see, the vision and stringing together multiple moves when I went into watching his tape.
Yeah, I completely agree. I gave him a 7.5 for his patience and a 7, I believe, for his vision. And I honestly probably could have bumped that up to about an 8, I feel like. I really enjoyed his patience. It felt like he was just a really patient runner. He would wait for his blocks to set up before hitting the hole. And I did, like you said, really like his vision. His ability to, as you said, diagnose the defense and then set up the second-level defender. I saw that was all over his tape. What did you notice about that, Cooper?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I had a 7 for vision and for patience, which, if you haven't been following us, that means good even by NFL standards. So 7 out of 10 might sound like we're saying he's mediocre, but that's a really good score. And yeah, I mean, I don't believe that I saw him miss any holes that he should have taken or make any egregiously bad reads. And, we studied 5+ games on him, and he seemed to be, he was finding the right hole, making the right decisions. And like you said, had a little bit of creativity at the second level, setting guys up, manipulating defenders. So yeah, pretty strong in this area.
I think that speaks directly to his elusiveness, right? I mean, I noticed several times he was sticking his foot in the ground. He was jump cutting well. He was pushing off and really, really setting up defenders well with the juke move, leaving guys on the ground in some cases. So, I mean, his elusiveness was something that I really enjoyed watching him. Now, the first game, I'll admit it, I watched Georgia for the first game, and you guys can speak on this a little bit too. That Georgia game's a little rough. But as you watch the rest of his games, man, his elusiveness and ability to just set up defenders with a juke move really stood out. Either one of you guys want to speak to his elusiveness a little bit?
Yeah, I loved his cutting ability. Like you said, just the plant one foot in the ground, stop foot, go foot, accelerate out of that cut. And he was frequently making people miss in the hole with that and on the second level. So yeah, I gave him a solid grade for elusiveness as well. I didn't think it was like elite or it wasn't like Bucky Irvin. Every single time the first guy to get to him misses, but he definitely had at least, it felt like 3 or 4 plays in every game where he would force a missed tackle with good elusiveness. So it definitely is something that I feel like is probably a little bit above average as a trait for him. And one thing I didn't mention that I meant to on the vision, he has had 5 years to figure it out. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. His age is up there. Like he's not a young guy.
So I feel like we're burying the lead a little bit as we're talking about this guy. Since this is a Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast, it needs to be mentioned that he is 24 years old and going to turn 25 during his rookie season in November. So we're not exaggerating. He's 24. He's going to be 25 as a rookie at the running back position where the age cliff is like 28. So
like at that point, you're looking for your
he's
second
not
contract.
even he's at his age cliff before his rookie contract is up. So we need to mention that. We're going to say a decent amount of positive things. I think we all at least liked his film.
Yeah.
But that's a huge factor in terms of his dynasty value. So
no, it's crazy that he's gonna enter the NFL at most points when other guys are looking for their second contract at the running back.
Yeah.
And that's wild to me.
I think he's already older than guys like Javonte Williams. I think he's maybe older than Najee Harris or close to Najee was an older prospect too.
Yeah.
But he's a lot of those guys that are coming up on their second contract. He's their age.
Yeah. What'd you think? Just moving on to his elusiveness, Rupert. What'd you think about that area in his game?
Again, I was really kind of shocked at it. I don't know why it's kind of went into the film, like having this perception from like kind of Twitter chatter that he was more of like a power back, a little bit of a floater. But I was really surprised with his elusiveness. Like he'll make a guy miss in the phone booth, like, running up the middle. He's one-on-one with the linebacker, not a lot of room to kind of make a move. It's not like wide open field, but he's able to kind of get skinny, juke him a little bit, shift his hips, and, kind of get around the tackle. And again, stop foot, go foot. He has a really good jump cut. Really good. I was really surprised by it. And it kind of goes back to his patience. Like he can be patient behind the line because he has such a good jump cut. Like he can just kind of like wait behind his guard and jump cut one way or the other and find the hole. So really, really liked his elusiveness. Again, it's not elite, but I thought it was well above average.
I mean, I think we all had it. If I looked at our grades, good by NFL standards. So like you were saying, Coop, I mean, seven on our scale is not a bad grade. It's where we're saying he's good even by the NFL standards. So I mean, we all like his elusiveness. Rupert, you said something that I just want to hit on as we're moving on to his power and his contact balance. You said that you were looking on his, seeing on Twitter that everybody was just saying he's a power back. And I don't know about you guys, but I didn't see that in his game. There were several times where, while I admit he runs with really good pad level. I mean, I think he runs with some of the best pad level in the class. Power back is not his game. And there were way too many times where I was watching his contact balance. It would look good in some areas, and then I'd be watching the film and he would trip over his own feet and fall. So like the contact balance, like I didn't give him a good grade for power or contact balance. I didn't think those were areas in his game that were all that good. But I'll start with you, Cooper. Did you notice anything different in this area?
No, I totally agree. I mean, he was listed. Maybe some of that power reputation comes from the fact that he was a bell cow and he did carry a workhorse load for Kentucky this year. And Kentucky had him listed at 5'10", 216 pounds. So, I mean, you would think that's pretty ideal size. But then he came in at the combine. He weighed in a full 2 inches shorter at just 5'8", and was only 211 pounds. So 5'8", 211 feels a little different than 5'10", 216.
Yeah.
And I thought he was less powerful than I was expecting on tape. I gave him a 5.5 for power and physicality. I gave him a 5 for break tackle and a 6 for contact balance. So overall, like I thought in terms of contact balance, that's the ability to keep your feet through contact. And what I did not see was him breaking tackles and coming out on the other side still on his feet.
Yeah.
What he would do was he could kind of push the pile, fall forward a little bit, get some extra yards, keep his feet on the initial contact. So that's why I wasn't quite as low on the contact balance, but the power and the physicality and the tackle breaking, it just really wasn't there. It wasn't a huge part of his game.
What about you, Rupert?
I agree. He runs with good pad level, but there's just not a ton of power. He's not punishing defenders.
Yep.
I did like his, contact balance a little bit. I did see him, kind of shift his, like with a subtle like juke and then hit a guy and then, stumble forward for 4 or 5 more yards.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a little bit in his game there, but as far as like being a punishing power back, I didn't really see that at all.
So we all noticed good pad level. I had an 8 out of 10 on him for pad level.
I had an 8 for pad level as well.
And it is interesting because, like, again, if he really was 5'10", 216 and running with good pad level, you would expect to see good power, because that's where power comes from for the most part. It comes from getting lower and having that leverage on the defender. So it is really interesting that even though he was running with consistently good pad level and we all noticed it, he still wasn't really breaking tackles. So, yeah, I don't know if he did a bench press at the combine. If he did, I'd be kind of curious what that score looked like for him, but I don't think that he did.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now. I'm not sure if he did.
I just pulled it up. He did not do a bench press. So yeah, I just wonder. I mean, he looks stocky. He looks strong. He runs with good pad level. It's just interesting that he wasn't moving piles. He wasn't breaking tackles.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, he was definitely more of I'm going to juke you in a hole, like in a phone booth, than he was, I'm going to run through you. And that was interesting to me because that's not what I expected going into the film.
Right.
Same.
So, while I've got the page up, something I do want to talk about, because as we're getting into his athleticism, 35-inch vertical jump, 9'11" broad jump. Not great athletic testing numbers. And I don't know about you guys, but when I was looking at his athleticism, it just really wasn't all there. He wasn't exactly a super fast running back. He ran with pretty good burst occasionally, but his burst wasn't always there. Athleticism, I just noticed, wasn't really his strongest suit. But I'll start with you, Rupert. Do you want to talk about athleticism for him?
Yeah, I think it's what's going to hold him back the most at the next level. I think he has good quickness, good initial burst. He has, strong jump cut, but he gets up top speed like real quick because top speed isn't very high. To be nice about it, but he just doesn't have the breakaway speed. Like he's pretty much always going to get caught from behind if it's a long run. But he kind of makes it up for it with his other attributes. But I think this is what's going to keep him from being, a first, second round pick in rookie drafts, in my opinion.
And I will say, like, sometimes, like, to be a successful back at the NFL level, you don't have to have crazy breakaway speed. Like there are plenty of guys who have succeeded by just gaining 7-8 yards at a time, breaking off an occasional chunk of yardage. So, do you still think, I'll start with you, Cooper, do you still think he can be a successful back even without that athleticism?
So the burst for me, he looked good, like we mentioned before, planting one foot in the ground and then accelerating out of a cut. That was where I felt like I saw burst. But without planting that foot and without making a cut, just trying to run in a straight line, it didn't feel like he got up to speed very quickly.
His acceleration wasn't really there.
Yeah. So that's interesting. It's like it was there sometimes, but in other situations it wasn't. Like he had to have that plant foot or that jump cut to explode out of. And if he didn't, the burst wasn't really there. Like you said, Rupert, the top speed, I think you may even be like underselling how poor that was, because it's not like he's running 40 yards and then getting chased down from behind. It's like he looks like he's got a hole where he could run for 40 yards. And not only is he not beating the angle, but the defender is catching him in like within 10 yards. And it looks like it should have been a breakaway run. So it was a really limiting factor for him. Even in college, I would say his game speed is like not even college average.
Yeah, I was just looking it up for reference. We all gave him around a 5, which is below average NFL level. So
yeah, below average speed for sure. And again, you can live without it if the quickness and the burst are really good. Those are just okay. And for me, we talked about the Georgia game being his worst tape. That's the closest that you're going to get to what an NFL athlete is like playing against that Georgia defense.
Yeah.
And he struggled. So to me, the physical limitations that he has with his size, with his speed, with his burst, his explosiveness, that's pretty hard to overcome, especially when you are going to be 25 years old as a rookie. So the combination of those two things, and none of the traits that we've talked about, like we liked his vision, but it wasn't elite. We liked his elusiveness, but it wasn't elite. There's no like really high end traits. He's just fine. He's pretty good in a lot of areas. And then he's got a couple real major limitations. So as much as I enjoyed watching Ray Davis's film, it's hard for me to see the fantasy upside here. He's a little less jaggy to me than like a Jace McClellan. He's got a little bit more elusiveness and making guys miss. His tape is more fun to watch. But I really think he profiles as like a backup level player in the NFL. He reminds me a lot of Mike Davis. So like maybe he has a Mike Davis-esque one season where he just falls into a huge bunch of volume. And if he did, I think he could produce. But I think he's probably a day 3 pick. I think he probably doesn't work his way into a starting role unless somebody gets hurt in front of him. And he's 25. So that makes it pretty hard.
That's a profile like him. They're going to take a few years to step into a role, and he doesn't have a few years to step into a role.
He really doesn't. So that's the hard thing for me. And we're going to talk about Shipley in a minute. That Shipley, I actually had a slightly lower overall tape score on Shipley than I did Ray Davis, but I would take him above Ray Davis in a dynasty rookie draft because of all these factors that I just talked about, specifically, especially the age. Shipley's an early declare. I think he's 21 years old. So that's a huge difference right there. I mean, 3 more years. But yeah, I think the athletic limitations and the age is really, it's hard for me to get over that with Ray Davis.
Yeah. And just to kind of finish it out, I mean, something we didn't mention, his pass blocking and pass catching. I enjoyed his pass catching. I feel like he ran pretty solid routes, more complex routes than some of the running backs that we've discussed. So I did think that's an area where he could be somewhat of a PPR back, again, if he can find, room on the field, which I'm not sure is going to happen.
Yeah, I think he was tied for my 3rd highest receiving grade in the class at a 7.5. He made really natural hands catches, even made one pretty tough catch on a wheel route down the field in the end zone. So I definitely like that. And he has my highest pass pro grade in the class right now. I thought he was really, really good in pass protection. Saw a number of plays where he just absolutely stonewalled the guy that was blitzing. I saw more pass pro reps on him than almost any other prospect that we've studied. It seemed like they asked him to do a decent amount of it. And I think I only saw like 1 rep where he got beat and caused pressure for his quarterback. So he was really, really good in pass pro.
Yeah, he played with really good pad level once again, and pass protection, really good technique. I agree. He is one of the best I've seen in the class.
For sure. Well, moving on, because we teased it earlier, we're going to move on to Will Shipley, 5'11", 206-pound junior. He was a 4-star prospect and the 4th running back in his class. Never really had an explosive season, I would say. I mean, his best season was his sophomore year at 1,182 yards and 15 touchdowns. He dipped that down this year, 827 yards rushing with 5 touchdowns. He did put in about 25 to 30 receptions per year. So that's an area that we're going to talk about in this film, but we're going to go ahead and dive into his patience and vision. I'll start with you, Rupert. What did you notice about Will Shipley's patience and vision?
I thought he was a little too rushed, to be honest. I felt like he was just, running straight into the hole and not really kind of taking the time to kind of wait behind the line to figure out, ways to set up his blocks a little bit better, or look for cutback lanes. I just felt like it was just, running 100 miles an hour into the hole and hoping something good happens. So I really didn't see a lot of patience in his film. I thought his vision was okay. I didn't see him pick the wrong hole too often, but he was able to string some runs together and a couple moves and whatnot. But it was a little few and far between. I was expecting to see it more, especially after watching Ray Davis before him. So
I did see him juke back into defenders a few times, which I didn't necessarily like. Again, his patience, like you were talking about, I mean, far too often he would just run into the back of his offensive lineman, which I don't know if situational, maybe he was just trying to gain a few extra yards or whatever. I don't know what the situation was because our film doesn't tell us that, right? So, but his patience was a little bothersome to me. I mean, I was watching his film, and we're going to get to this when it comes to his elusiveness and some contact balance and stuff, but I didn't walk away too impressed really in any area of Will Shipley's film. I'm excited to hear Cooper's thoughts on it because I know he's got something for us. But his patience and vision, I wasn't too impressed with. It was just like, I mean, he's running the ball. He's not really doing anything special with it. But Cooper, what did you notice about this area?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree with you guys. I didn't think it was terrible, but it didn't stand out as a strength for me. I think I had a 6 on his patience and a 7 on his vision. The vision seemed fine to me, but the patience, like you guys said, and it was interesting too. It almost seemed like, and this is just a theory, because when he was outside in space after catching a pass, he looked really fast and explosive and elusive. But when he was behind the line of scrimmage trying to pick his way through traffic, he did not look like, I think he ran like a 4.35 or something at his pro day.
Yeah, but he didn't look like that.
It didn't show. Definitely running between the tackles, it didn't show. And I think some of that was it wasn't a physical thing, it was a processing thing. It like took him a second to figure out like where he needed to go, and there was a little bit of hesitation, maybe just the cognitive like time to recognize it and then go made him look slower than he actually was. So I didn't think that he was great processing at the line of scrimmage, trying to pick his way through traffic.
Speaking of that, I remember one play, and I can't remember what game it was, but he got the handoff. He was cutting to the left, and he stutter steps. The line doesn't open. He kind of moves to the left, stutter steps a little bit. Line still doesn't open. And then by the time while he's waiting to figure out what he's going to do, he gets tackled in the backfield. And I think that's just a perfect example of what you're talking about, Cooper, where he tries to wait too long, it feels like sometimes, for blocks to set up, and he doesn't just hit the blocks that are there immediately. And
which is interesting because we said we felt like he was in a rush and running into his line a bunch. So it was like this weird, like sometimes he was too patient and sometimes he wasn't patient enough. Like he just didn't have great natural instincts, it felt like, behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. One area that I feel like he at least showed some pretty good promises was his elusiveness. I remember one play where I saw him break a guy down in the phone booth really well and kind of go around him. He was on the left side of the field and go up the field for about another 5-10 yards. I feel like he was kind of all over the place again with this. I mean, sometimes he would show some elusiveness and sometimes it wasn't really there. But I feel like for the most part, I gave him a pretty good elusiveness grade. I mean, I felt like it was at least there somewhat, where he would make a guy miss and he would cut really well. I mean, there was one game in particular, I think it was the Florida State game, where he broke a guy down at the second level really well. So, I mean, he's got that in his tool bag. But what did you guys notice? I'll start with you, Cooper, about his elusiveness.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I just said. I thought that when he was out in space on the sidelines, he was great in this area. I saw a number of forced missed tackles, not broken tackles, but forced missed tackles. Yeah. There's a difference. But again, like between the tackles in a phone booth, I didn't really see. I noticed the one play that you mentioned against Florida State where he stuck his foot in the ground and made a couple of nice juke moves. But that like really popped out on film because I didn't see it anywhere else. I was like, oh, okay, well, Shipley didn't, I just wasn't. So I gave him a good elusiveness score, but almost all of the elusiveness was out in the open space. I did not see it in traffic very much.
What about you, Rupert? Are you saying the same thing? Was it elusiveness on the edges and not really in the hole? I'm kind of what Rupert's or Cooper's talking about?
Yeah, pretty much exactly what I saw. It almost reminded me of Jalen Wright, like where if he's like completely up to speed, then it felt like he really didn't have that elusiveness. He wasn't able to cut as hard and make a guy miss, but if he was able to kind of break a guy down like in space on the outside, then he can make a really nice sharp cut and make the guy miss or do like a little semi hurdle.
Yeah.
So he showed flashes, but it was too few and far between for me, as well as like when you see it, you're like, oh, okay, there it is. And then, you go another game and a half before you see another one like that.
Yeah. And moving on, I mean, just kind of getting to the next thing, power and contact balance. Again, want to talk about something that I feel like wasn't in his game at all, was his power and contact balance. I mean, it seemed like the first guy that always got to him was going to tackle him. Sometimes he was getting caught from behind in the hole and he was getting pulled down. There were several times where a guy would break through the line and you would like just juke him out, like just go around him and get the additional yards. He would go down on first contact. Power wasn't his game. He wasn't running anybody over. Rupert, did you see anything different than I'm seeing here?
In the games I watched, I can really only remember like one play where he kind of ran a guy over. And it was really disappointing. Really disappointing. I was expecting to see more based on seeing like highlight plays on Twitter and stuff. And he, like you said, like most running backs, like, if you're playing with good pad level, like even when you get tackled, you're going to fall forward. I saw him like get tackled and fall backwards so many times.
I saw him get hit a few times and cough up the ball because he got rocked so hard.
Yeah. So I feel like he's almost going to drive some coaches crazy, just not getting extra yards like pretty much ever when someone gets a hand on him.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, and I think it's a combination of a couple things. For one, his build. I don't know if we've talked about that yet. He's kind of got this weird, almost wide receiver-ish body type. Like he's tall and lanky. He's, I think, almost 6 feet tall, but he's only 206 pounds. I think he weighed in at
5'11", 206.
Yeah, so like, and he looks lanky and tall, which is you don't normally running backs look short and stocky, and they got that low center of gravity, and he didn't really have that, and so I think there's a real issue with just lack of play strength. But then at the same time, he also didn't run with great pad level. It was okay. It wasn't like terrible, but he didn't run with great pad level. So overall, I'm totally with you guys. He was tied for my lowest grade out of anybody that I've given for breaking tackles. He was tied for my lowest grade with contact balance. And he was just slightly above my lowest grade. I think I gave him for physicality and power, I gave him a 5, and my lowest grade is a 4 that I've given anybody. So overall, yeah, there's just not a power element to his game. It's not who he is as a player. And he was one of the worst in the class that I've seen in terms of power and contact balance, tackle breaking ability, that type of thing.
It's funny because some of the clips that are cut up on the Dynasty Nerds film page, and again, guys, use code COOP if you want 15% off on that. Some of the clips that I saw, he wouldn't get the ball. He would be lead blocking, and Phil Maffa would get the ball. And I was like, wow, this guy looks way better than Will Shipley does. And like, it felt weird, like going into that like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Phil Maffa was their power back. I mean, he's a big rocked up dude, and that's why he was in a timeshare. That's why he took a step back in production his last year of college. It was because Phil Maffa had taken over a lot of that early down grinding end zone type of work from him that he had gotten the previous year. So yeah, definitely a valid observation, because Phil Maffa definitely is more powerful than Will Shipley is.
Something I noticed, and I'm excited to talk about this, was his athleticism. Because you look at his long speed that he has, his game speed. I gave him a 6 for game speed, which was average NFL level. Coop, I'm going over to you for this question, but I'm looking at your game speed on him, and you gave him, let me see if I can find it. You gave him a 7.5 on game speed. So, I mean, that's a good 1.5 difference on game speed. So I'm excited to kind of debate this with you. And look, when I was watching the film, especially between the tackles, he looked like he got caught from behind a lot. He didn't look like he was nearly as fast as his combine testing showed. Where are you coming from when you gave him a above average NFL level for game speed?
I know that he has it. I mean, that's a physical attribute you either have or you don't have. And particularly when he was in space, it's like, how can you show off game speed if you're getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage? You know, how can you show off your game speed if you're barely getting to the second level? And he struggled between the tackles. It's not where he thrived, was between the tackles. So when he got to the outside, when the defense sealed, or when the offensive line sealed the edge and it was an outside run play, man, he would hit that and he would go. And when I saw him get up to speed, he looked fast to me. I mean, definitely when I compare him to some of the other guys in my ranking set, like, he's visibly much faster than Ray Davis, who we just talked about. Like, I gave a 7 for game speed to Audric Estime, which that's probably really generous, but it's because of, some breakaway runs where his burst was terrible, but when he got to build up to speed, Audric Estime could get rolling pretty fast. Shipley, he's faster than Audric Estime. Like, if I'm giving Estime a 7, I got to give Shipley a 7.5. Like, when he got out and actually had space to run, he looked fast to me. So that's where that score came from.
And maybe part of it is just frustration on my part because he did look so bad between the tackles, right? I feel like I'm never really seeing you get up to speed. I'm seeing you get caught from behind and between the hole way more often than I'm seeing you have these quick bursty runs. I'm going to go to you, Rupert. What did you notice about his athleticism?
I wasn't as impressed as I was expecting to be. Like, even on plays when I saw him bounce outside, he got caught from the cornerback before he could kind of round the corner. And like, it shows up sometimes for me, and then other times it doesn't. It was really hit or miss. So I don't understand like why it was so hit or miss. Like, sometimes I'm like, man, he looks slow. Like, even like when he's outside or in space, and then sometimes he looked pretty fast. Yeah, I didn't know if like maybe there was injuries in some games that I was watching or what, or if he was battling through stuff. But yeah, it was really hit or miss for me, and I didn't come away from watching, I think it was 5 games I watched of him, where I didn't come away saying like, oh, he's a 4.3 guy.
Yeah, I mean, 4.39 at the pro day, which again, you can kind of maybe add a little bit of time on pro day numbers because they're a little less accurate. So even if you say like he's a 4.45, like that's pretty respectable. 38.5-inch vertical jump, 10-foot 2-inch broad, like those are good burst and explosiveness numbers. So I mean, he had a really solid pro day. But yeah, I think I agree with you. He didn't look quite as athletic to me on tape as what he showed up at the pro day, but he didn't look slow to me either, particularly when he got out in space. And I really think it's a usage thing. It's like, what is his role? And I don't know that Clemson used him the most effective way. Like, to me, we're going to talk about pass catching in a second. Yeah. They should have used him way more in that area because he was really good at it. And when you get him out in space and when you get him run into the outside, because he ran so much between the tackles. I mean, I feel like I only saw 2 or 3 plays in like 6 games where it was an outside breaking run. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you not running him to the outside? He's a speed back. He's an elusive back. He's not a power back. And so when you get him in space and you put him in the right situations, which I would hope an NFL coaching staff would do, I think the athleticism is there. Why are you just jamming him up the middle? He's 5'11", 206, built like a wide receiver, no power in his game, everything we just talked about. Why are you using him that way? So
why aren't you using him as a wide receiver? Because I felt like, 30 catches on the season, like that feels low for what he should be at. Because that was his strongest area. And we're going to go in now to third down skill set. He was great as a pass catcher. He extended really well to the ball, had soft hands. He was running some more complex routes. I mean, this was an area where I felt like was a strong suit. He just wasn't utilized that way. I feel like at the next level, if he's going to succeed, if he's going to be worthy of, like you said, Cooper, a late round draft pick, I feel like he's going to be a PPR back, right? In that mold of he's going to catch a ton of passes, and that's where he's going to find his usage at.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he got the highest pass catching grade for me in the class. I gave him a 9. And for me, like if you're just catching dump off stuff and your hands look solid and fine, you're not getting above like a 7.5. So to get up to a 9, you need to show me like route running. Like they can move you out wide, put you in the slot. You're gonna go out there, run routes, be a weapon, a versatile weapon that an NFL offensive team can use in a number of different ways, like a chess piece. And Shipley, to me, like Clemson again wasn't using him that way a ton, but I definitely saw like some angle routes and some really snappy slant routes. Just moments, these flashes where it's like, man, if a team was splitting him out and kind of putting him in that Christian McCaffrey role, like he could really keep defenses on their toes and great hands. And after the catch, he was just way better. All of that athleticism that he showed at that pro day, it came out when he caught the ball in space out on the edge.
When he was in open space, right? That's where it shows up.
Exactly. So to me, he reminded me a lot of Jerick McKinnon. Was like that's the role, like where the Chiefs have kind of used Jerick McKinnon in that pass catching 2-minute drill role where he catches it and he's athletic and he can make people miss and he can get burst and get out of bounds. Like that to me is what Will Shipley's role should be at the next level.
100% agree. He is the best pass catching back that I've looked at this year. Like you said, like he's running really snappy routes. Like his angle route was deadly. No one could cover him on those out of the backfield. And multiple times, he's free up the middle because he just broke the linebacker's ankles on this angle route. And I saw him score 2 or 3 touchdowns that way in the games I watched. Really natural catching the ball. And like you said, he looks more natural, like catching it and then turning upfield and, kind of diagnosing like what moves he's going to make and things like that. I agree. Like it almost feels like maybe he should be playing a little more wide receiver or just, out wide more often than he was.
So if you look at it, he got a 63.68 between all of our grades averaged out. And based on our score, that's an average level backup player. Do you guys feel comfortable with that assessment on Will Shipley?
Yes, in the sense, not that he's going to be, so like when I think of Ray Davis as a backup, I think like, okay, he's a true like backup, like he's a handcuff. He's going to go in there when the starter gets hurt and he's going to do what the starter normally does. When I say backup with Will Shipley, I mean more of like a complimentary, like he's never going to be a lead back, but in that Jerick McKinnon role where he's technically like the second running back on the depth chart, but he's on the field a decent amount. I think he could be. Now we'll see what kind of draft capital he gets, if he even earns that kind of role with a team. But to me, when you talk about the fact that he's like a full 3 years younger than Ray Davis, you talk about the fact that he has a clearly defined role where he's not just average at everything, but he actually, like, he's really bad in some areas, but he's really, really high end good in some areas too. There's a clear way that a team should utilize him. And that way, if it happens, leads to fantasy points because we play in PPR leagues. Every time he catches a pass, that's a point. So to me, depending on where he falls, what kind of scheme, if there's a coach that's kind of proven that he can use a receiving back like that, I could see a path to fantasy relevance for him, whereas I can't really see it outside of injury for Ray Davis. So that's why I say, even though my film score on Shipley is a little lower than what I gave to Ray Davis, I would take Shipley above him every single time in a rookie draft.
And you're not paying high prices for him either. So I mean, he's worth the dart throw for his receiving upside alone, I think.
Yeah, and I think you could probably get him in the 4th round of most of your rookie drafts, definitely the 3rd round. So he's a guy that I'm at least somewhat interested in there.
Yeah, I'm really interested, and I'm kind of intrigued like what getting into NFL strength program can do for him. If he puts on a good 5 to 10 pounds, like what is that going to do to his game? So he's definitely a guy I'm going to be taking dart throws on when drafts.
For sure. Well, that about does it for us tonight, guys. I'll start with you, Coop. Where can people find you on Twitter? If they're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, where can they come over and join our awesome community over YouTube? And go ahead and even plug the Discord while you're at it.
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter/X at CouchScoutsFF. And that's also the YouTube is youtube.com/@CouchScouts. So if you're listening on Apple, you want to come check out the YouTube page, definitely check that out. But definitely the Discord, you guys. We haven't mentioned it yet. It's completely free. We got guys hanging out in there every day, talking trades, talking breaking news, getting into these rookies. It's a lot of fun. And we just really enjoy getting to know you guys as listeners. And so building that community. So definitely come jump in. That'll be in the description wherever you're watching, whether you're on Apple or YouTube. Look in the description. You should see a Discord link. It's totally free. Would love for you guys to come join us.
How about you, Rupert? Where can I find you on Twitter? And go ahead and why don't you plug that awesome project that we're working on to hopefully be released by draft season?
Fingers crossed. Yeah, you can find me out on Twitter at MatthewRupertFF, and we've been working really hard on getting together our first rookie guide for you guys. So stay tuned for that in the next couple weeks or months.
Next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so that's going to have like every even has a chance at fantasy. Anybody that you would even think maybe that guy could be fantasy relevant, we're going to hit in that rookie guide. We're going to go trait by trait, breaking down strengths and weaknesses. So you don't have to, when you're on the clock, you're trying to decide, hey, what do these guys think? What did they say about them? You don't have to go like re-listen to the podcast or something. Just pull it up, PDF. It'll have our rankings, our film scores, strengths, weaknesses, what we would project for them at the next level. So hoping to have all that out for you guys the week before the draft. So definitely stay tuned for that. We'll get you guys some more details when we've got them.
For sure. You guys can find me on Twitter at Davey and Matt. Always love to interact and hang out with you guys on the Discord. Make sure you guys join that. Like and subscribe to the YouTube page, as well as leave a rate and review on the Apple Podcast. That's how we get all this information to people who'd like to hear it. Other than that, we'll be back next week with more rookie breakdowns and Inside the Prospect series. And until then, we will see you guys next time.